Well, start with news of the week. Does anyone have anything news-wise, Bill?
Yes, they found a new burial chamber in Greece. Oh, bugger, I've done that one, haven't I?
Oh,
Yeah.
No, I'll pass on this one, Jess, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Bill. And anything with you?
No, it's been a very funny week this week. I had lots of things popping up that I didn't expect, and putting me off my stride.
Yeah.
But I think I have watched something. Yes, there was a very good program. I know it was only a program, but it was a good program on about Pompeii and Herculaneum, about them stealing the marble, stealing the marble from underneath the city, which was incredible, really. But amazing. I didn't realize that it looked so complete. Now they've removed it, and how much ash was what such a big wall of ash was over, all over. Look at it, Carl. I can't really. No, but anyway, it was very good. Yeah, very informative. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Anne. Good. Pat, anything that you've got to share?
I did watch a program on Rome, and it was about Nero and how he cleared so much of the land all around there and built his huge castle. And his dining room was up 3 stories up, and they found that there was areas where they could have had ball bearings, and they were actually spinning it around so he could have a dining room, that turned slowly, and it was powered by water, aqueduct.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah. I didn't know that he, I guess it was a huge fire of 69 AD or something, and he was able to reclaim a lot of the land where all the tenements were, and make this huge palace. I don't know how many acres it is. It's enormous, but 3-story building with a spiraling dining room.
Wow.
Unbelievable. They found bits and pieces of it around. So.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That sounds really interesting. It sounds really spectacular from what you described, what it would look like as well.
Yeah.
Henry, anything that you'd like to share?
I was only just following on Anne's story because I saw the same program, and what surprised me was that the Italians are still stealing from the site even today.
Yes, there's still tunneling going on. Amazing.
So there's stuff still disappearing all over the place.
Yeah.
But I think that's something for the Italian police to deal with.
Yeah, definitely.
The mafia are involved there, must be.
It was from Herculaneum, wasn't it? Wasn't the tunnel in Herculaneum?
And Pompeii as well. It was people with farms and stuff on the boundary of Pompeii, tunneling down and then back into Pompeii.
I just didn't. It was the only program that made me realise how, covered the whole area was in ash. I hadn't got my head around that.
Yeah.
You've seen the figures and things, brought out of the ash and things, but I just didn't realise how deeply covered it was, and it's amazing.
I think it's very interesting how they've both been preserved, how they were both affected, but in different ways. Herculaneum was the ash, whereas Pompeii was more of
pumice.
And it's quite interesting to compare them and see how the archaeology compares to each other, what they can reveal. I watched a documentary with Mary Beard on Herculaneum, and she showed this amazing wall that had been left where they were painting on it, and obviously what had happened, and they just chucked all their paint pots, and you can still see where they had chucked them on the floor, and their painting wasn't finished. So little things like that, it gives you a snapshot of what happens in the last moment.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mary Beard, something that I saw yesterday that I think is very interesting, something that I think is going to get I'm going to get. So if you're interested in the Roman period, especially Mary Beard, what she has to say, and there's a book called How to Manage Your Slaves, and it's just discussing slavery in the Roman period. But it looks like a very interesting book, and it's been all over some of the history pages on my Facebook. So.
Oh. Nice.
If any of you are interested in that, like I am,
could be quite humorous.
Yeah, I like what she has to say. So yeah, that's something I'm going to be looking to add to my collection. I've got too many books to add to the collection. Too many. I said I need a new sort of shelf to put all my books because it's getting a bit ridiculous now.
Yeah.
I've just dumped a load onto my little sisters as well. It's like, oh, here's some books, read them. They're not impressed.
That's handy.
Yeah. So today we're talking about the caves of Valerón in the Gran Canary Islands. And this one has been much of a debate. So you can see the place that we're talking about today is this place here. I don't know if you could see me scribbling, but here, and is located in this area here where that star is. And the reason why I'm showing you other areas is are just sort of foreshadowing, really. Some of the discussions that I've had in terms of trying to find out what the purpose was of these caves, and some archaeologists and scholars have actually looked at other caves nearby to try and get an understanding of these people and what these caves were used for, really. Because the reason why there's so much debate is because what has been written about in the past about them, for most of his history, was believed to be a pre-Hispanic rock cut complex. There was a monastery, and this was used right up until the end of the 15th century when it was under the conquest of Spain. And it's also been argued that this was something that was used before the Roman period, and it just sort of leads to a question why we don't have any evidence of maybe interaction with the Romans. But there has been some nods, according to scholars, of these people and of this monastery in the Roman period. However, it seems to be something that's sort of dismissed very quickly. What we know of it at the today in modern times is completely different to what people originally thought it was. It's now thought to be somewhere there was storage for grain and barley, and it was just a storage area. And some people have also argued that maybe this was a place for the dead as well. So you do start having a very interesting sort of perspective on this when you look further into it. It is like a rabbit hole in itself, and it's amazing to see it all in the rock. Let's see if this moves. So one thing, even though this is a blurry picture, that for some reason every picture that I could find of this was very blurry, but what you can see is the caves are here. No, the caves are all by here, and it's very high above ground, and it contains 298 compartments. And the reason why I just wanted to sort of try and show a picture of it in the distance is to just sort of show how protected it is, and that's significant as well in both of the debates on whether it's a monastery or somewhere to hold grain. They're both protected, and this has led to a debate because we have documentary evidence really of what the Spanish had seen and experienced, but in terms of archaeology and comparing it to other archaeological areas, it could be very contradictory together. And I think that is what has led to the debate. But on the main common theory now is that this was just storage for grain. And this is the location of it is it's in the northern coast of the Gran Canaria island, and is near Las Palmas. And this is a natural formation of volcano debris that has created this, and they've been able to sort of dig through this with tools, wooden and rock, and it just showed how they were it was very soft rock. It was easy for them to actually go in there and create this amazing structure. So the arch that you're looking at here is natural. It's just everything else is been dug in, and it's like it's been described as like a honeycomb sort of structure. And the reason why there's been a lot of discussion is because there were 20 mummies that had been that was there and was able to provide us with evidence, but they were destroyed by the Spanish when they took over. And this is a structure that's associated with the Guanche people, and this is some people that we've discussed about before. They were discussed to be tall and unusual and with blonde hair, and very similar to those of North Africa. And when they've looked at some of the evidence of these people and compared them to North Africa, we found that there's a relation genetically with them as well. So that also brings up more of a discussion of who these people are and their identity. And I think one thing that's a shame is that definitely the structure is part of their identity of how they stored grain or anything agricultural wise. They had dried figs there as well, but I think we don't see any artifacts with the mummies to sort of tell you more about these people. But then if you look at it another way of it being a monastery, it could be their identification in terms of their religion and their spiritual beliefs as well. But the Spanish had called them the beautiful people with blonde hair, and they were very tall and very respected. And there was tens of thousands of mummies there at the time that the Spanish came. And what happened with the mummies is that they were being ground up and made into like a paste to deal with any stomachache that anyone could have. And that is another reason why these mummies had declined, why there's so little evidence of them now, because they were being used for medicine by these people. So like I said, this is a mountain volcanic tooth made from volcanic ash, and it's similar to the ones similar to Pompeii with the ash as well, and it has a 20-meter high natural arch. You could describe this as sedimentary ash as well. And the beginnings of this, the name, for example, that it was a monastery for people in the area, but it was mostly to confine young women to protect their virginity, to keep their honour, right up until when they got married and they were let on. But there was also high priestesses there that were able to be respected and sort of, but went to was for any sort of advice. And I think it just shows how this interpretation can maybe show us how they saw each and every one of these people, you know, despite gender, they're all respected. But for some reason, this is like a matriarchal society where women seem to be the most protected thing and the most honoured thing, especially the fact that people are asking for advice from a female priestess, which I think that it just tells you a different way a society can spin on something. And what some people have described this place as to be maybe more worldly than spiritual in recent times, but it is very interesting to look into the spiritual debates about it. And the Spanish had even wrote that there was towers connected that framed these caves as well, which are no longer able to be viewed. But that's very interesting, because I think that would then further add to this idea of it being a monastery. And what was said was that outsiders would not know the space and what it was used for compared to the indigenous people that lived there. So this was something that remained, I think, a mystery to any outsiders, and I think that's what's led to the debate, is because people have sort of speculated it in many different ways. It's also known as the Cenobio monastery, so that Cenobio means monastery, that's what is also known as. But again, like I said, people have argued that this main purpose now is more of a communal granary rather than it just solely being a convent, really. A convent monastery sort of area for women. But the earliest reference that we have of it is from an 18th century text, which is by a historian called Pedro Agustin del Castillo. And his belief that this was a monastery, and he actually wrote about this. So I'm going to just read out a direct quote from him. Once I was in the Guia district in a place known as La Dehesa, and the two prominent local gentlemen who accompanied me asked if I would like to see an ancient monastery situated high above the Valerón valley. Two horsemen led me to the place, and we made the perilous ascent. I must confess I was astounded to see the structure carved out on the rock face using sedimentary axes or picks made from flintstones attached to sticks, as metal implements were unknown at the time. A great arch was cut into the mountainside, which had led with a long corridor with many small chambers, equally placed on either side. Some were on top of others, and each had a window. There were two towers on either side of the entrance, which could be sealed from the inside with windows overlooking the deep valley below. The ancient chronicles speak about the existence of vestal virgins who lived in a convent in vast caverns. I was shown one such place situated high on a hillside. Tired and perspiring, I took a photo of the interior. This consisted of a multitude of superimposed niches cut into the rock. Some were small and other larger, and ones would not have accommodated an adult body. Unfortunately, ignorant treasure seekers have caused considerable destruction. Situated high on the slopes of the Valerón Valley in Gran Canaria, a large protocchio leads into a vast complex with small chambers cut into the rock on both sides. Pedro del Castillo claims that that each chamber here has got a window that overlooks the valley, so it's almost like that would be the similar sort of view that anyone would have if they were there. And he also discusses these two towers, like I've said, and it, you know, when the site was visited in 1827, P.B. Webb had gone with a few people and said that there was no sign of anyone living there. There was no evidence of that, and so this is what has really led to this being a debate now on what the purpose was, because you have this 18th century reference discussing this by a historian, and then you have people going then back a century later and saying, well, there's no real evidence of that anyone ever lived there. And I think that's where we come to our sort of understanding of it now, of what it used to be. But I think it's very interesting. I think it gives us an insight of maybe if it was a monastery, of maybe the beliefs of these people and how highly regarded women were in this period, which is very interesting compared to some other civilizations as well. But I think it's a nice little sort of interpretation, and it's a nice discussion to have around it. And I think you can find evidence of both of them. Some of them eyewitness, and some of them can be archaeological as well. But I think the reason why this one's gone with a different view of this being not really much of a monastery is because of the archaeological evidence that have been found. People are now letting archaeology sort of lead the way with this, rather than just letting the documentary evidence lead the way, because like I said, this isn't a problem with interpretation. And I think one thing that we have to note about that 18th century text, that witness statement really of this, is that like I've said before, outsiders would not have known what this was for and what the space was used for. It was hidden anyway. So I think this was something that they didn't really want anyone knowing about, because this was where their food was. This is what this was their life really. This was important to them. But you do have connections with the modern interpretation of high priestess coming into play here, and that is very interesting. But like I said, when you compare this to similar locations in Gran Canaria or Northern Africa, for example, in terms of their storage of grain, you find that this is most likely a communal grain store. And like I said, there's also been evidence that maybe there wasn't, there's evidence that's been written about that this was spaces that people have gone into and realised that there's not really much space for a human adult body to actually survive in. So again, sort of striking off that belief that this was a convent for women to go until they were ready to be married. And I think it just allows 20th century historians to really discredit this idea that it was a monastery further. Especially when you, like I said, you compare it to other places in Gran Canaria, Northern Africa. It seems that this is definitely more of a communal grain store, that a settlement would have put grain nearby in. So this is a location that was good for defence from raids by neighbouring villages, pirate attacks, and like I said, it's in this mountain, this hidden, and is well protected as well when you go in there from the humidity and the heat. But this is showing that their agriculture is their backbone of society, and is highly regarded, and so this is seen as something that people contribute together and put things in. Like I said, grain seems to be the most important storage here, especially again when you compare it to other caves of similar interest. And then they know that there would have been barley and maybe lesser extent wheat that was in the silos. So these are described to be more silos now. These are silos in a communal location for everyone to go to, keep everything and to watch, rather than putting them in loads of different places and having it more at risk. It's better to have it hidden where the community knows and it can all be sort of protected in one space. And what they believed is that this keeps it safe from any neighbouring villages, any people nearby that might want to take it. But it also allows the high priestess to look after it themselves, but also to redistribute anything that in times of drought, plague or famine. And I think that's a very interesting idea as well, of helping everyone in the community. They all help each other. And it's a very interesting way of dealing with things, because obviously this is an area that is very fertile, but however it's very hard for the trees, for example, to sort of come there naturally. It would have to be something that they couldn't be able, and they could have take a very long time, and it couldn't be really travelled by people. So trees would have sort of, the pollen would have come here through the water. So again, this is an area where it's very highly fertile, but everything here is precious, it's got to be looked after. And I think that's why they have a high priestess that's in charge of it. Again, this is sort of relating to that belief that even though women weren't stored here with a high priestess, it just recognises that a female priestess is important in society, and they have the say of everything. And it's a more generous society of helping each other out in times of need, by all working together to create that. Historians have also argued that families had to give some sort of tribute, or maybe a tax, however way you want to look at it. And both words they can mean the sort of the same thing, but they can have different meanings and definitions to them completely. But I think this tribute / tax thing would sort of fit in with this high priestess keeping a few things for times of crisis, really. But some scholars have also suggested that that this contribution by the family was actually recognised as well by the person who had run this, the high priestess, and it was recognised with a seal that was stamped on the wet mortar to seal the door. So that's another thing, especially when you look at medieval manuscripts, for example, anything that's legal, that they try and have their own sort of identity sort of put into it. So they use a seal. Sometimes different seals mean different things. And these seals have an image or something that shows it is theirs. And that's their way of showing their identity and showing what is theirs as well. But this was stamped on wet mortar, which had sealed the door as well. And that is where you end up with a lot of discussions well of what had protected all this granary, etc., from birds, because this is good for humidity and temperature, but birds can still get in here, and yes, there's been a lot of discussion on that, whether it was wooden doors or maybe just animal skin. There's also been a lot of discussion on that, but again, another comparison with North Africa is that, and their grain stores, is that it's almost contradictory to when compared to this, because this is seen as a place that grain is stored for the community to live off, and is showing what they live off and what it means to them, that is their life. But in North Africa, it's seen that grain is an offering, is not really a possession. So again, it's very interesting. I think what you've got to take into consideration here is that even though they're very closely related genetically, they could have had their whole different idea of thinking as well, and have their own ways of doing things. They can be very similar, but they can be a little bit different to each other. I think that's one thing scholars got to take in mind with that, because comparative archaeology is useful for knowing things about a site that we might not have much knowledge of. Looking at similarities can play a part in it, but at the same time they don't always have to be exactly similar. And I think that is what I gathered from all this, is that no one is really taking that into consideration. They seem to think that it's meant to be exactly like all the other caves nearby. But I will agree with them that these were too small to have people confined in them. But I think it is interesting, because then it leads you further into the debate. So okay, this might have held grain, we'll go with that, but there was no, it was kind of unknown really of how the grain was stored, and I think that is important as well, because there's loads of different ways you can store grain, and again, this can just allow us further to maybe make some more similarities, etc. But they also found dried fig there, and tools, some pottery. So I was thinking maybe the pottery could have been evidence of storing any grain as well. But on a whole, when you look at cereals in archaeology, they're usually held in silos like this, but they remain. But the remains of pottery and baskets in this site point to maybe this being a way that they sort of preserve their grain differently to any other site. But I think it provides good natural shelter. I think that this photo here is very interesting, because you can really see the different compartments, but you can also see how small it can be. So I think it just makes more sense that it would be a place to store grain and other supplies. This is also what else it looks like. It does look amazing really to have this carved out into a rock. But I think that this has sort of led to more discussion, because it is a place of good natural shelter. You can regulate the humidity and the temperature. But grains had come from scholars have sort of discussed further then of where these grains could have been found, where they would have come from, and they believe to be from the Vega de Guia area. The Galdar area is the most fertile region in the area, and it has good soil, is favourable climate. So I think that maybe that's where it came from, and it eventually ended up here to be protected because of how well this site is sheltered and how well is hidden from everyone else. But you can also see some scholars arguing that the grains can be produced along the coastal plain as well. So this definitely shows that this is something that's surrounded by areas that can produce the grain, and definitely show indications of where it might come from. But grains of the foot of this hill here, so at the bottom of this mountain, there's also found some settlements from the same time period. So I think that has led to a discussion as well. I think personally that there was a settlement at the bottom, and this is something that overlooked them, that they guarded at the bottom themselves. Yeah, so I think that seems to be most favourable, because the closest settlement is the stone house village on the coast of San Felipe, also otherwise known as well as the La Raga area. So I think there's evidence nearby to show that this definitely was something that people didn't live in. They possibly would have had something separate in their settlement, if that's what they believed with young women. But they've said that even that there was 3 caves in here that was not suitable for storage at all, completely. That's what is thrown a few scholars off, is that there's just 3 caves in here that's not suitable for storage. And they're thinking maybe this was a dwelling, maybe evidence of a dwelling in caves nearby have also been compared. And I think they've come to the overall conclusion that maybe this wasn't a dwelling site, but these just 3 caves have sort of thrown people off on a whole. They have found also several funeral caves nearby this cave, that also was compared to just sort of discuss the burial aspect of it all as well. So like I said, there were several. So you've got the Hormiguero area, the Moro area, you've got the Lapa Moros de la Lapra, and the Cuesta del Sevilla caves as well. So that I think what I'm trying to say is that they've compared to with other areas just to sort of get an understanding, and what they're getting here is that this is a site that, even though we're using other sites to help get to the answer of this, we don't really understand it as much as we kind of hoped to. And on the top of the caves, so you have the settlement below, but on the top you have the Torroga de Galero, which gives you a panoramic view of the northwest of the island, in line with the Galdar Hill. So there has been finds there, but the finds at the moment have been mostly unknown. And it's sort of left to quite a lot of discussion. But like I said, the past theory of this area sort of left a mark on its name and how it is viewed, and definitely led to the discussion. They think that maybe these 3 caves that were not suitable for storage, maybe they do suggest dwelling of maybe someone who was looking after the storage of grain here, and ensuring that it was protected at all times. Someone again saying that maybe it was a priestess called a Haramangadas, or otherwise known in English as of women awaiting marriage. But again, it just seems very conflicting with what we have put with other evidence in the archaeology. But another thing that's sort of a little bit of a discussion as well is that someone said that these were maybe before the Roman period, and that someone said that there was probably Roman traders then with these people, and they were seeing these people but interacting with them, but they weren't actually directly meeting the people who were creating these caves. but what the issue is that it gives like about 1,000 years difference then when you radiocarbon date it. But some are saying that this is about 1,000 years old. Some are saying that this is about 2,000 years old. So it's very conflicting. But this is a place with soft rock, so definitely an interesting one. And like I said, with the trees, it's restricted because of the way that the pollen works. It can't go through it can only go through water. It can't go through air and not through human travel as well. And I think it just shows that these people are very interesting because it's raised a discussion on who they were, their identity, and people have discussed this to be Atlanteans. Some are saying that it isn't because there's not really much sign of high culture like the Romans. And definitely, I think one thing that everyone can agree on is that they're genetically similar to those in North Africa, because of the blonde hair of the mummies, and that's something that we'll look into after the break, because that has led down to another rabbit hole. But you can compare these people with their structure as people maybe that had they're like the people of Mesa Verde with their structure. They use these holes for shade, whether that be for people or grains, but again, definitely seems to be storage of grains and other food. But like I said, the historical sources are vast about this and very conflicting. Some say that this was before the Roman period, but then they stepped in with radiocarbon dating of the fig leaves that were nearby, and it showed that this was about 1040 AD to 1410 AD. So this is what is sort of thrown really the narrative through documentary evidence that we had. And I think it's just interesting because why didn't the Romans really sort of take over? That's something that they on a whole seem to do when you look at their history, so it just seems very interesting that they didn't take over. And normally the areas that they don't take over, like Timessos for example, they're seen as very high people with a lot of documentary evidence and their own sort of evidence coming out in written language. But I think another thing interesting is that there seems to be nothing in terms of this written language that's shown, but they seem to me, I think, to have a seal on a door of something, that seems to be something of a high civilization to me, because they really want to show their identity. They have their understanding of showing who they were and what they mean, whether that be in other different ways. And you see it in British medieval manuscripts. Like I said, the seals are put on legal documents where you can't really show your identity as such. And I think that's just something that's running in history, is we all want to leave our mark in some sort of way. And it's definitely led to a discussion on who these people were. But it would be interesting to see if there was any surviving seals that has been discussed left to show us further of these people and what it would look like, the defining features really. But like I said, this is a place most likely for storage rather than living, and this is a place where barley was grown, not in the caves but nearby and just brought here. But I think the legend of it behind it is sort of just confused maybe the beliefs of people of what this was. This was there's another interpretation with the seal is quite interesting as well. So some have said that this seal is maybe something that showed their contribution to this tribute or tax with their grain, whereas some have sort of related this back to their legend as saying that this seal maybe was a seal of the owner of the young woman before she's ready to go and get married, and just further showing a place for women stood. But I think what we need to take in account here is that if we want to compare, they're definitely different to Britain, to how Britain was at the time. But I don't think it's unusual to sort of confine someone in a very small place. And I'm only thinking this in a spiritual way, because, like I said, in the 1800s, they said that this was small storage areas that wouldn't allow women to live. But if you compare that to women who wanted to be seen as very pious and very religious in Britain, when you have anchorite, their rooms are sometimes, they vary in size, but some rooms were so small that they couldn't even lie down or sit. They had to stand, and it was terrible conditions, but it was a way of showing their worthiness and showing how protected they were. It was seen as their armor from the outside world to protect them from any evils, from corrupting them. And I'm just thinking, okay, maybe we could apply that to them. Maybe they had that same sort of idea, but in a different way. But again, it's very interesting when you discuss this legend. And I think people just need to maybe understand that belief of having bad living conditions sort of reflects to them being very pure, and maybe making them very desirable by men, and that putting a seal on them is showing how important they were. But then again, putting a seal on them, etc., just makes it seem even more oppressive. That the women are seen to be more sinful. Some people can look at it that way, whereas some people can look at it as a way of protecting. But again, if you're going to go down the route of it being small because they want to prove how pure and worthy they are, it just seems very oppressive. And from what we've gathered of these people, they seem to be very tolerant and very it seems like a very fair, equal society in some sort of way. In fact, women were more highly regarded, so I just don't think that fits in. But again, it can all be sort of fitted to fit people's beliefs at the time. And I just think that this is just a place that is allowing protection from the elements as well, but not so much my common belief of it is the fact that it is storage grade. But it is interesting to sort of argue with this legend, if you just be devil's advocate and say the legend is true. But what is interesting of this place is that it had a royal decree of Spain to note that this was a cultural interest, and this is definitely something that's been protected now. I think they don't let many people go up to certain parts of it now just to protect it, because this is soft rock as well. They don't want it being ruined further. And there's some evidence of Guajart. This is something else I wanted to note as well, is you have different ways of storage. You have this one here that sort of faces out this into the rock and on top of each other, but you also have some that's into the ground. They used every little bit of space that they had with them to create different ways of storage, and I think maybe it could just show different ways of storage for different things as well. And that's just, what's interesting. But this is also a recreation that they had, maybe what it would look like, these little wooden doors, and maybe they stored the grain in maybe pottery or maybe baskets, but that's something they used just off the small bits of evidence that they had found there. But what I'm interested in is that when I searched this is what I found in some one of the caves, is that it's faint art there as well. And they said that maybe this could have just been evidence of art, maybe their way of just sort of showing evidence of their identity. But again, it's interesting. I think maybe this could have been reflected in maybe the burial part of it, the burial aspect. But what is interesting about their dead is how they can be related to Egypt, how they look after their dead as well, and the mummies of Egypt, again, the hair, but how well preserved they were. And that's something that I really want to get into after the break, is looking further into the mummies and what they were like. But unlike the Egyptian civilization, their mummifying process it seemed to be more environmental than deliberate. But that has also gone into a discussion because these mummies seem to have evidence of sometimes of it not being as natural. But I think that this is a place that's very significant. It was more than 500 years ago, and it continued after the Spanish it's come and conquered, but eventually the natives that lived here were sadly wiped out. And this is definitely led a debate, because this is the identity of the people who live nearby, and I think it seems to be something that needs to be of interest of other people to try and get some more understanding, and maybe sort of try and relate the settlements and any fields nearby together to provide more evidence of their farming, the way they lived, any artifacts that show identity, any further pottery, because I think that would be very interesting, and just to look at their art, because that last photo I showed you of the art on the wall, it definitely seems like that they were very distinctive in their art as well, and that was another way of their identity. But this is a location that is very significant in terms of their defence as well, and just keeping natural shelter, but also shelter away from the rest of the world, and because of that, I think that because of this mystery to protect it is led to a mysterious debate in a way, and it's further dragged people into the modern day. So I'm going to ask questions now. So Anne, is there anything that you'd like to ask or add?
I suppose it's just, well, it's a very, I would think if people went there, it was a very useful thing to find, you know, the sort of pumice kind of, because it's got like a quality to it that, you know, it's different to just ordinary rock, because it's sort of, is it porous, or it's very light, I would think, you know.
I think that's what is,
and easy to sort of work, you know. So it must have been quite, you know, easy for them to bore out these recesses, you know, or carve out these recesses. So yeah, it's fascinating to know what they were used for. And I just wondered, how long was the period that they were?
From what I read, let me have a look at where I got it on my notes. I think it's from 100 AD to then the 1400s, but that has also been debated, because you have people saying that it was before the Roman period, but just based on radiocarbon dating, that's what they believe it to be when it was occupied. So yeah, I think that's led to debate, only because they've got people saying that there was connections. Yeah, so it's very interesting. I think it just needs more investigation really into it, because you get more questions you do answers sometimes in these places, Anne.
It's another intriguing people. And it's funny how they, you know, were they blonde just on that island, or were they, you know, the sort of people were, you're going to come on to that later.
It's a very interesting one, because there's evidence of the Spanish saying that they were tall, beautiful blonde people, or with red hair, and that's definitely something that they've you know, gone with. But then they've connected it with the genetics of mummies in North Africa, and have found a link that way. So there's also been a discussion on why maybe the hair has gone lighter as time has gone on. So yeah, that I think that one's also been a debate as well. But I think again, is the Spanish and their eyewitness account has sort of thrown people off as well. Yeah.
I look forward to it then.
Thank you, Anne. Bill, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
Yeah, with the natural migration of peoples over the millennia, and the proximity of the islands, Gran Canaria in particular, Lanzarote, to the African mainland, I mean, there had to be a drift from there to the islands, which makes the blonde-haired mummies absolutely mystifying, why they should have that genetic code in them, you know. And of course, it's that, in fact, which spurred, during the World War II, spurred Heinrich Himmler to send the Adenauer over to the Canary Islands, because he thought that possibly these people, because of the blonde hair, were the original of the original Aryan race. What a nonsense. But yeah, whether any sort of genetics have been carried out to try to pinpoint the location of where they came from, because that in itself would suggest they came from the north rather than from Eastern Africa, isn't it? So it's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
And the other thing, when I was in Gran Canaria some years back, I actually went up to the high mountains to see the cave dwellers who exist to this day in Gran Canaria. And it's amazing. You go into a little cave, it's the size of a normal room, and there's the kitchen, which got plumbing in there, it had heating, etc., and electrics. Then you go to another room, which was the bedroom. Obviously, it was a cave to tell that, and then it was the lounge with all the furniture. So people started living in caves, and to this day, they still do actually in that part of the world. You know, fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
but the genetics is particularly of interest, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, I think that's what sparked the big debate. Really, is the genetics. You can imagine finding that being very groundbreaking at the time as well.
You could say, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Pat, anything that you'd like to ask? Pat, you're on mute.
I had a big sneeze there. I had a sneeze, so I had to stop.
It's okay.
Oh, also it's interesting. You know, quite a variety of uses there between medicine and grain and monasteries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think at the moment it seems to be something that's multi-purpose until people have actually agreed on something. Yeah, but it's very interesting.
It could have changed, you know, the use could have changed.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that people, because from what I can gather from it is that people want to just sort of stick with one interpretation, but I think they're not really sort of looking at it as a bigger picture. Yeah, no, I like that interpretation, and thank you, and thank you, Pat. Henry, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
No, it was just really following on from Bill's comments. I think where these people originate from is, most intriguing. You know, the genetic side of that. I mean, obviously, where that is going would be interesting to know. But no, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. We'll have a little break and then we'll come back. So see you in a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I haven't lost my thingy. You can come with me, Bill.
Hello, Anne. I'm back.
You can meet me in Chandy.
What for?
To come and see the
Oh, the church?
No, yeah, or the crop circles.
Well, there are no crop circles anywhere.
No, I know. But
The church is interesting because many of the men who were killed during the Park Slip disaster of 1892 are buried there. It's a nice little church set in the hill there, yeah.
I think it would be a nice place to visit. Pat could come too.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You
I mean, the
know,
church.
on a
church
nice
was-
day. I expect it'll probably go off now for the next week.
Yeah,
Cold again, but
maybe next week.
there's a lot more interesting. You know, when you look into it, there's more than you think in the area. Like just like you talking about my stag and, you know, the Dinvey Valley, Langhanoid and places like that. You know.
Yeah.
There must be sort of places. I think this guy wanted to know like what it was like around there before industry, you know, the industrial.
It was beautiful. The whole country was beautiful. The valleys were beautiful. Just a few farmsteads here and there, you know.
But I didn't realise, Pat, that San Fried is St. Bride's.
Oh.
Because it's the parish around Sarn or in Isaldra is St. Bride's Minor.
Oh yeah, I have heard that. Yeah.
Do you hear that?
Yeah, it is St. Bride's Minor actually.
Yeah.
Connected with St. Bride's Major.
Yeah. I mean, I just little things I just didn't know. I just didn't know. I mean, you see this church because it's cut off, isn't it, by the bypass now?
Yes, you've got to actually go towards. It's just next to the station, actually, Sarn railway station.
Oh right. So you better to go there. Better to go there, really.
No, you can actually drive into the lane leading down to the church gates and park in the lane there. No problem.
Of course, the only thing is these churches are not open now, are they? But the graveyards are interesting.
No, the graveyard will be, but the church, no, you'd have to have special permission from the church warden or the vicar to visit now, unfortunately.
I mean, there was a grave. I noticed there was a grave in the cemetery there, in the graveyard that was 1760 something. I thought there might have been one a bit earlier than that, but that's the earliest I saw. And he was a William John. So that's always been a big name in the area.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, of course, during the industrial development stage. But the Tondy Ironworks, of course, the brickworks.
Yeah, I mean that.
And a few mills as well, you said.
Yeah, yeah. So where are you? Is this trip on the 12th? Is it the 12th you're doing or 9th? Is that the one
that I'm doing?
Is that the one in Lavernock?
Yeah, it's St. Mary's Well Bay.
Oh yeah.
It's on the 10th, so on Saturday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be looking. Hopefully, I've got some. Carl has sent some bits and bobs of other pieces of research to me, and I'm going to look at that and see if we can, especially myself, see if I can look at it, maybe try and look at it through fresh eyes as well, see if we can find anything with the area. I'm going to try and get some LiDAR images as well of the area, and just get more of a understanding as well. It seems.
I think our class has all been down there, and there's probably more people around Barry, I would think, and Landsford that are more.
Yeah, hang on a minute.
Yeah, they might be more keen on it, because I'd love to get some something going in this area now.
Sorry about that. Scammers on the phone.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I know. I think Rosamond is joining us there, and she's got a lot of knowledge of the area as well. So we're gonna have her view of it all and see if she's found anything. I have a real good observation of it. Get as much as we can out of the area. Yeah, so that's starting at the 10th, so it'd be very exciting to do. Yeah, so if everyone's ready, I'll get started into the.
I'm locked out on visual at the moment.
Are you? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you can't see any of us, Bill.
We
can't see anyone. I can see myself. That's all I can see. Does Pat locked us out, or?
No.
We can see Bill.
The little blue boxes that has a camera in it, at the very bottom.
But Pat has been learning some IT skills. She might have become a hacker overnight. And
I lost the bar on the bottom as well.
Oh.
It's gone.
Oh.
So go for the escape button. Try escape.
Oh,
escape.
I don't know about that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you might just escape forever.
Because the issue is KARL's the host as well, so if anyone leaves,
right.
Gotta get you back in, yeah.
Do you want to phone KARL? Shall I phone KARL?
I think you better, yeah. I'm locked out.
Well, we can see you, but
yeah, we can see you. You must be.
Yeah, we can see you clearly, Bill.
I can't see myself.
It must be another browser
down at the bottom. You're move it down to the bottom. I mean, take your pointer and point it down at the bottom. See if anything pops up.
Yeah.
The very bottom.
Sorry, press what?
Take your mouse and move it down to the very bottom.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, doing all that. As I said, the bar's gone. The control bar's gone.
Would escape work? I know it seems silly. Oh, he's muted himself.
I think he tried that. Oh, he muted himself.
Oh.
Now we can't hear you, Bill. Go across the bottom.
Oh, there you
go.
go.
Now you can hear me.
Yeah, can you see us?
Yeah, okay, now we're back to normal. So what was all that about? I don't know.
Yeah, down at the bottom. Sometimes I have to go down to that little camera.
Yeah,
I do find that Zoom gets a bit glitchy as well after an hour or so.
Yeah.
It's happening all the time, especially it's not KARL's account either setting this up. I've noticed that it's been going on with my uni lectures and it's quite annoying. But hopefully everything is fine. I think it was a couple of weeks ago we had a bit of an issue with my computer and everything was going black and I could hear everyone but I couldn't see anyone at all.
Hang on, it's gone again. I'm gone.
Again. Have you got what about
Isn't it just a black blank screen, Bill?
Yeah.
No, I've gone back to desktop. I've lost all my icons. And I've got user account control, Zoom video communication. Do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? I haven't got an app. I'm back now. What happened there? Again. IT.
Right.
Carry on.
Amazing. Right, I'll share screen. I think that the next part of the lecture is that I've obviously everyone can see this, can't they? Yeah, that's cool. So the next, I think that the best image here at the moment to just for what I'm discussing is like a background photo. I obviously then looked at the people and get a sense of who they were. And And that has come up with quite an interesting discussion as well. Again, we've raised in the questions of who these people were, and there has been a lot of debate on it. But more recently, so there was a person called Rodriguez Valera and a few other people, but he was the one that was leading it. In 2017, he had examined the DNA of the 11 Ganches people. Pardon, Bill?
Something's come up again. I agree. It's like a connecting. In the middle of the screen, I've got these little blank. Oh my God! Please wait. The meeting host will let you in soon.
Oh, I
can't get in now. I'm waiting to let me in.
We can hear you.
No.
Can hear you, but Carl's gone, hasn't he? So
are you talking to? He's gone out, is he?
Yeah.
Please wait. The meeting host will let you in soon. So something strange is going on here, and I can't get rid of this now, apart from leave meeting. I tell you what, I leave meeting and try to come back in again, okay?
Well, Carl's not here to let you in. But yeah, try that.
I'll try that. So
yeah.
If I can't get back in, you know why. But I'll leave the meeting and try to get back in the normal route, okay?
But okay. Yeah, I know Carl will be back at
Hang on. It's back now. It's back again.
Good. Hang in there. Don't touch anything.
Technology likes to tell us.
No hands, okay.
Right. Fingers crossed it stays like that. It's almost like the equivalent of well, when I was in primary school, my sisters never. When I told them about this, they were mind blown. I said they used to wheel out this big TV, and they used to say to us, "Oh, it was dodgy," and then we had to like sort of be quiet and sort of pray that it would work. It's you're at the mercy of technology.
The aerial on your head.
Yeah. I told my sisters about that. They were gobsmacked because obviously they've got these special whiteboards now that you can touch. Obviously, I remember when they first started getting introduced into school. That's what it reminds me of. We're at mercy at technology. No matter how advanced we get with technology, we're always at mercy of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So yeah, this person, Rodriguez Valera, in 2017 with a few other scholars, but he's the one that's identified as being the head researcher on this. He had examined the DNA of 11 mummies of this area, and he took 11 mummies. Some of them were from this area, Gran Canaria, and some were from Tenerife as well. And the 3 samples of the Y DNA extracted all belong to the paternal Halipolf group. So this then ends up going to like very sciencey terms, and I think that's the one thing with archaeology is that it goes into real sciencey terms, and sometimes it can be quite hard because, especially with what I'm reading here, they didn't have any like a page of just talk about terminology so you can understand. But from what I gathered here, that they were able to determine that they were genetically similar between the 7th and the 11th centuries AD. And they were the closest genetic affiliation was with the North Africans. And this evidence was supported in the notion that these people descended from the Berber-like population who migrated from North Africa. So I would like to show a picture of the mummies now, if that my laptop wants to let me. Here you go. So yeah, so this is the mummy in question. You get different ones with different types of hair colours. There's another mummy as well that they've sort of gone through layer by layer to look at the skull, etc. But they had found that they had migrated from maybe North Africa, and among modern day populations, these people were found to be genetically similar to the modern Sardinians. So this, I think this is just sort of very interesting because it just gives us an outlook on their identity as well. There has been recent studies then from 2017. This is something that's been looked at for years and years and years, and they've gone back and have come out with different interpretations. So the most recent one was by Friegel in 2019. He then looked at the 48 mummies buried on the islands of the Canaries. And he also agreed that they had evidence of North African descent, some from Europe and some from the Near East. So this has then sort of left this to be a very interesting topic, and I think he related this as well to this being migrations and different people interacting with each other, but most importantly, he identified maybe Bronze Age migrations from Europe coming here as well. So it shows that these people are very diverse genetically, and they can be found in a lot of areas. So Gran Canaria is one, Tenerife. Those seem to be the two most important places in sort of discussing the genetics of these people and ultimately their identity, knowing where these people come from. And it's definitely interesting because these are these people, when you type in these people, the Gran people, so it's GUANCHES, and when you type in them and just looking at Wikipedia alone, there's a lot written about these people, which I think is just crazy because this one site has created so much confusion. They had their own language, so that's another thing that you can add to their identity, and this has been supplemented by several place names, and many modern linguistics have further looked at the genetic evidence to say that they are from North Africa, and they have then proposed that maybe this is a language is sort of derived from the Berber branch, and their languages as well. So that's very interesting to see that link in a very different discipline as well. But there are recognisable Berber words as well that have been found, especially in terms of their agriculture, in their language, but there's no grammatical inflections that have been identified from the Berber civilization. But there's been a large stock of vocabulary that does not bear any resemblance to the Berber civilization as well. So that has definitely come to a lot of discussion. And then you get to their how they looked as well, and their garments was thought to be of skins of animals, mostly goats, with plant fibers called the tamarcos, and this has been found in the tombs, in some tombs nearby as well. But they also had a taste for ornaments, again from wood, bone and shells, and I just think it just shows how they were able to see their identity for that, and it can be seen with some of the mummies, but on a whole the mummies didn't really have any identification of who they were as well. There's nothing sort of possession wise, but this is something that they found in settlements nearby, and some of the mummies. They were found some beads that were baked from baked earth. Some of them were very circular, some of them were all in different shapes, but their colour in their designs seemed to be one that was similar with the art that you see here, where it was meant to be various colours, and most of it being black and red involved in it. But they really did go into detail with a lot of their artifacts, and that shows who they were ultimately. There were, like Bill had sort of noted, that there were dwellings that were situated in natural or artificial caves and mountains as well. So this is where it has led to this maybe being cave dwellings, but there's also been evidence that they created certain small roundhouses as well that could have pointed towards there being place to live other than the caves. I think what's interesting as well is that, like I said, that 18th century Spanish eyewitness account saying that there was towers framing these caves. I think, especially when you look at it as saying that there was 2 rooms for storage, that didn't sort of suggest that there was storage, that it was more for dwelling. I think that could just sort of relate that maybe there were people being kept here, but it was in the towers, and the towers are no longer gone. I think this is just a very complex area because this has been an area that's sort of been an attack of looting as well. And so that's affected the archaeological sites in a whole. But you have seen there to be a lot of understanding for the need of these sites, whether that be spiritual or agricultural as well. But I think in terms of agriculture, I think you can relate that back to the Berber people because it was important to them. And if this is who they originate from, then it would only make sense that this would be important to them as well. I think the systems of beliefs that they had as well, they believed in a supreme being. That is what some interpretation is from people, and each area had their own sort of supreme being that they believed to be the high and mighty. But male and female gods had lived in mountains as well, which they descended to hear on prayers of people. I think that's when you get the interpretation that maybe this was a monastery because it was in a mountain. If people felt like these mountains were a way of accessing, then that could be a way of looking at that. And then you could interpret it further of putting their grains in the hands of the gods to be looked after and protected by the gods. So that's an interesting interpretation. And then you have the interpretation that if you're going to go down the North African route, then you can interpret this to be maybe a place that was offerings. But definitely it's very interesting to sort of look at that and how that can be related. But they believed in again prehistoric beliefs of someone being in charge of the moon and the sun, and this all being connected with each other. And I think it all relates as well to how important things are in terms of the agriculture. They had gods and idols used for different things to protect them from times of drought, to protect their agriculture, to protect their people. They also had, from what is described to them, they had their own little feasts to represent the celebrations for certain gods. But most researchers, most scholars on a whole agree that these people performed their worship in open and sacred areas and underneath trees, for example. But yeah, this is definitely interesting. But some of I think what has come to the conclusion of this being a very hotly debated area is that there's also been evidence of worship in caves. So that you have, for example, Tenerife has been compared for this with their cave of Anchibinco. That there was evidence of that being a place of worship. So again, people try to relate this to something like this. And I think you can relate it because anyone who's on my medicine seminars know that I've said in the prehistory that sometimes, not even prehistory, ancient history, Hellenistic period, for a while, medicine seemed to be spiritual and physical. And some people went to places of spiritual worship to actually have medical attention, and that's what seemed to be with these caves in Tenerife. So someone tried to put this with these caves, and it said that due to this phenomena called mumia, which was creating a medicine used from the mummies for things like stomachache. So stomachache was one of the most important things, and you definitely see that in China as well in this time. They've done a similar thing. So it's definitely something that, you do see a lot of concepts being made in different locations at different times or at similar times as well. So I think that just also proves my argument of, yes, we can compare archaeology, but on a whole, they can tell completely different things, and they can be a little bit off to each other. But I think from that interpretation was that people were coming to these places for help, for to look after their health and wellness, and they were able to have a spiritual healing, but also using the mummies nearby. So that I think that is also interesting interpretation, but I think the grains in it just sort of further shows that this was possibly somewhere where it was stored. Again, like Anne said, this could have possibly been a multi-purpose thing that had changed over time. The towers went, they changed it to storage and maybe a place of worship. I think this does hold a significance of it being in a mountain. I do think this was something that they believed that gods could protect by putting them in mountains. It's interesting about these caves is that they're all connected by steps as well. But these people, you know, they came to an end with the Spanish conquest. That's when they started going downhill around about the 15th century. And the vast majority of survivors were converted into Christianity, and then they were sold off to slavery, and maybe married the conquerors. So it shows how these people were sort of forcibly sort of dissolved into because of these things, and their history needs to be protected to keep them alive in a way. But I think that that's left of an issue because we don't really know the issue as well. Like I said, it's been described as a place that outsiders would not understand or know about. There has been sort of evidence of social hierarchy or maybe social organisation here, especially they use Tenerife and Gran Canaria, this place of understanding. And I think one connection is that on Gran Canaria, they had seen the act of suicide as an honourable thing. It was not uncommon for when a chief was enthroned that one of his subjects had sort of threw himself to pay tribute to him. So that's very interesting to make of it. I think it can be very conflicting with some of those things. But in terms of North Africa, I think you see it with the Kushites. They had that whole belief of the priests deciding when the ruler had sort of ruled enough times and that he would then have to be given up as a sacrifice. But it's a different way. They saw sacrifices giving thanks to their ruler and showing their appreciation and to pay tribute to him. So that was on Gran Canaria alone, but that's very interesting. And maybe that could have affected the way that these people were then buried and remembered. But you know, women were very respected in this civilization, and any blow against them was considered a crime and severely punished. So even if this was an area that wanted to protect women and seen as a matriarchy, I think it definitely shows that it was some sort of matriarchy there. The women were highly respected and they've seen as something as like a higher form. But the lifestyle, really, they said that they lived in maybe artificial or natural caves, which has led to the discussion of this. But they were also able to build huts and small fortifications, which you see in the smaller settlements below here and nearby. And the basis of their foods was roasted cereals, etc., grains. And I think that just sort of shows how they're using everything around them and they love different things. But they had a lot of things that found in their graves in Gran Canaria that was jewellery that were made from wood, shells or stones. So again, they're reflecting who they are and their identity through the way they are presented. But they're definitely using everything around them. And their funerary rites, for example, their practices are argued to be they're different techniques, and they're similar to those practices in ancient Egypt. And that's where people have ended up making this discussion, because they allowed the dead to be embalmed to promote their ascension. But at the same time, it was a way to honour their memories by keeping their mummified remains as well as possible. So they're seeing this connection then with the Egyptians as well. And you know, when they had farewell to their loved ones, they would sort of go to these caves and sort of leave maybe a bowl of milk from the goat that they had used nearby. But the Archaeological Museum of Tenerife in Santa Cruz is the one that has these mummies now that we've looked at, and they've really sort of discussed this and have really got the curiosity of scientists. And these Canary mummies were shown throughout the world. It went to Paris and it went to Madrid. It also went to London. So this has been great interest for a lot of people. And there's been lots of different recreations to show what they would look like. For example, this, it's a very interesting way because they're also using the evidence of some of the pottery as well found nearby. And they even tried showing the pottery as a way of showing their identity in terms of the way it's read with the wiggles on it. So it looks very similar then to this. It's that sort of type of the design. But back to these, like I said, embalming was the same as the Egyptians all those years ago, but due to looting and desecration, the limit of the mummies in this area are a very small amount, and this has then sort of been debated in terms of their intention of what they intended for these mummies. So what I mean by that is that in some of these caves they had found that the mummies weren't preserved well enough, and then some of them were found to be preserved really well. And what was really interesting was that they were able to see that some of them were purposely intended to be preserved and some of them weren't, and it happened naturally. So that was very interesting to look at how they, you know, that it seems to be different intentions of these mummies and their burials overall, but on an examination they found that they were very tall people, which is confirming what the Spanish had said about them, that they were very tall individuals. The males stood 1.70 meters in height and the females were 1.57 meters in height. So it confirms the eyewitness accounts of the Spanish. So I think this is why we shouldn't discredit this whole cave being framed by towers, because it seems very plausible. But what was noticed about these people is that they had a very robust frame as well, so that is what made them appear bigger. But the oldest mummy that they had found recently is from the 3rd century AD. But they could be possibly older. But again, this is sort of come to a lot of discussion. You have Ancient Origins is one of my favourite sites to look at for any sort of, I find them as very intriguing pieces of history. They discussed that from the 8th to the 10th century, there was, you know, they were looking at mummies in that way. So you find that there was loads of different ages being buried, different genders as well. So you had adults, newborns being buried as well. And in 2017, like I said, they looked at the data, the DNA, and they said that they descended from the Berbers from Libya. And they were described to be hunter-gatherers. They migrated 1000 BC, and they lived in caves and huts. And they were just known for their farming, and I think that's definitely what you see from the archaeology left behind. They were known for their farming, for the dried fig seeds left behind, from the pieces of grain left behind, the storage. This was really important to them, and maybe that could suggest maybe trade with them as well. But the mummies is what's interesting, because the mummies have been able to tell us certain things about the hierarchy of society as well. So Spanish explorers, when they came here in the 14th century, they actually discussed that they described that there was different types of mummies being found. So you had mummies of low status that was buried in sandy graves. So I think that showed that they were mummified not intentionally, but you know, by accident. Naturally they were preserved. And then they said that the upper class members of society were then deliberately mummified themselves, and then they were put into caves. So I think, again, it just shows us that the identity of that person and what they meant. But they argued that caves could hold about 1,000 people in them, but all we have left is just 20 mummies. because of this whole mumia thing that was going around. One thing that they actually discussed was how both genders could work on the dead, work on mummifying them and dealing with them. So that was either male or female. But the issue with this job was that in society they were considered very unclean for this. And I think that just shows their culture and their outlook on everything as well. But they identified 3 methods of mummification, which was very interesting. So you got enviscerification, preservation, and stuffing. So that's very interesting to note. But when you look at the mummies, there was preservation of the outer parts of the body, which was normally achieved through a combination of resins and animal skin wrappings as well. So again, this probably would have been the higher status people. But this was, the resins were prepared in a mixture of minerals, plants and fats. And they were spread across the body prior to allowing it to dry, either in the sun or through smoking. And eventually the deceased was wrapped in animal skins, and they were just laid to their final resting place. The number of animal skins that was used to wrap that corresponded in the individual social status. Kings were said to be wrapped with up to 15 skins. So I think the skins sort of, you know, the more skins, the better, really. You were sort of showing off who you were. And that, again, I think it just shows their identity and how they were able to sort of show that in other ways. But an archaeologist called Veronica Alberto and a culture counsellor, Joeva Velasco, they told the local media nearby that there were many burial graves in the Gran Canary area, and you know, this one was very interesting, the one that was nearby this one. And when they looked at the remains of the Aboriginal inhabitants before the island was colonised in 1402 and 1496, the Ganches were actually ethically and culturally absorbed by the settlers, so that they seem to sort of be something that coexisted in a way. But this, you know, like I said, in Gran Canaria, they've also found mummies with newborn remains as well, that has not been found in previous excavations. So that was very interesting as well, how each and every one of them was treated differently. But what they're calling for is more respect for these caves, to look after them, to actually keep this going and sort of further show. Because from what they've gathered is that we do have that DNA, we do have interpretation, but we really don't have enough understanding of these people as a whole. We only have scraped the surface with them. And according to the BBC, for example, an ancient method of communication that replaces the Spanish language with the 2 whistled vowels and 4 consonants. So that was a way that they were able to communicate by these people before the Spanish settlement, and it just died out by the 17th century. So they were just sort of further highlighting that, yes, we have all this information, but we don't really know much about these people as a whole. And I think this one site just gives us a little taster of what was important to them, i.e. their agriculture. That was their livelihood. That was what kept them alive. And like I said, there was evidence of deliberate stuffing, but that was only of dead bodies of very high up people. And you know, this preservation that was found from skins. But another interesting was that, especially in this site that we're looking at, there was some preservation that was used from the bark of trees, and there was also evidence of a mummification that would just happened naturally. But when they looked at these people as a whole and they looked at their characteristics, they saw that they had the characteristics of the North Africans with the curly hair, but they had, some of them had evidence of this blonde hair as well, or red hair. But you have the evidence of more facial features, which is the large lips as well, and the nose is sort of allows us to create that connection, because again, preserving a way that someone looks can also give identity of how civilizations that they come from. You definitely see that with Sutton Hoo, for example, where they looked at the helmet and the features that were put on the helmet to sort of relate to that being Anglo-Saxon, for example. So yeah, it was very interesting, and more recently, so in 2020, they did have more findings around these areas in terms of finding more about their mummification. So like I said, in 2020, they had found an ancient Guache cave tomb, which had provided 72 more skeletons to add to what was originally had found of these people. So that I think that was a very interesting thing to find. But the DNA aspect of it, you can find a lot of it on Google. You have a lot of scientific news that discusses it, but they definitely believe that, again, like I said, this come from Libya. These people come from Libya, and then as the 15th century come on, they were saturated with the Spanish DNA with them. But they were looking at the Y chromosomes, which allowed them to have evidence of just further of where they came from, and they just saw that there was different populations in their history, and it was just trying to sort of narrow them down further and further. And they found that the majority of DNA that was found was from North Africa, and definitely when you look at how these people looked in their identity and how they buried their dead, how they stored their grain, it seemed like that they did, and they took an influence from these people and brought it into their own interpretation, bringing it into their own sort of way of looking at everything. So I think it just shows that this is more of a site that's worldly, but I generally think that it would have had some sort of spiritual significance tied into it, just based on their agriculture and hoping that it's okay. I generally think that maybe this was a place that had a god watching over their grains, looking over it, and they definitely saw the way that grains were stored from their ancestors before they migrated from North Africa. I think they also had knowledge of mummifying their dead based on what they've seen in people in Africa as well with the Egyptians. So I think they were able to take that influence with them and put their own little spin on it, but taking those influences from other people allowed us to show their origins as well, which is an important thing to note. But on a whole, they have sort of believed that the mummies found at Gran Canaria Islands inherited about 16 to 31%. So it's still a high range between their ancestry is from North Africa. Yeah, so I think that was a very interesting to note how they were showing them their identity through other ways, and you can definitely link the identity with other people. But yeah, the DNA studies on it are very interesting, but they can get very much a heavy read in terms of the scientific lingo that they used as well, and the HVRI sequences. They're just big long words. They need to sort of make it more easily readable, I think. But yeah, on a whole, this is a group of people I think that have had influence from many places, and I think the reason why they discussed the red hair or the blonde hair is because in the Bronze Age period they believed that there was some connection with Europe being made. Yeah, so these people have been something of wonder, so have their caves. I think it's more commonly understood that this was a communal area to store grains and other agricultural goods. The fact that there's no evidence of goods of burial, sort of personal items, is interesting. because surely if you had someone of high status, you'd think that they'd be buried with more than just a load of animal skins, especially a king just being wrapped up in 15 animal skins and left at that. I generally think that there would have been more personal artifacts nearby, but like I said, there's been looting, so maybe they were taken then at a later period. Who knows? That's an interesting discussion, but this has been an interesting topic, I think. So I'm going to go around and ask if anyone's got any questions. So Anne, is there anything that you'd like to ask or add?
Just I think it was just very interesting, and it was interesting to see the photographs and the wonderful bone structure, you know, high cheekbones.
Yeah.
Quite, yeah, as you say, quite attractive features, you know, and
yeah,
and but I suppose you can liken them to, I don't know, I was going to say Egyptians, but no, they've got a very square chin, haven't they?
Yeah.
Very square chin, whereas Egyptians seem to have like more pointy, well, you know, more sort of oval faces. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Anne.
Yeah.
Peter, not Peter, Bill, anything that you'd like to ask or add? Sorry, I was thinking I was on a Wednesday lesson. Anything that you'd like to ask or add?
Yeah, interesting comment from Anne then about the square jaw and the fair hair and the possible interbreeding from peoples of the north in Europe.
Yeah.
You know, and of course the Germanic peoples, aren't they?
Yeah.
Not unknown for fair hair and square jaws, you know, as a thought. But it's a pity, you know, that there's no evidence at all of the language, because the language can also point you in some direction as to the origins of people. But certainly the cave art you showed, you mentioned Berbers in North Africa, and what I've seen are the patterns in present day North Africa, and places like that. Yeah, there's similarities, right, in there, yeah. So the clues are there, and presumably the ongoing research is still ongoing by different universities and things. Yes, fascinating people. I looked at my Spanish dictionary now to see if I could find an equivalent of the Guanche people, you know, but there's no word as such which matches. The closest I've got is a glove and orphan. Doesn't mean anything at all, really. Yeah. So Guanche is a manufactured name, same as the Siluries in Roman South Wales, etc. Something, it's just a great pity we have got no evidence of writing. But that is a fascinating talk. Yeah,
thank you, Bill. I think that the colours are very interesting, because it is the reds, the yellows, and the blacks. There's that colour theme.
And the patterns, you know, the sort of the right angle triangle pattern woven into the fabric. That's typical of North African designs, etc. And textiles, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Definitely, I agree. Thank you, Bill. Henry, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
No, just really interesting. Again, something never knew about, so I've learned something again today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's all right. Thank you. Pat, anything that you'd like to ask or add? You're on mute.
I can't imagine them grinding up part of that mummy. You know, is it a finger?
Yeah.
What? And did they just mix it with something else? And
I think they would have created like a paste with it, from what I understood. And it was ingested.
God.
Yeah, so lovely. Yeah, you can imagine.
So the mummy is gone, you know, you just keep using it.
It's probably like plaster of Paris, you know.
You can sprinkle it on your cornflakes in the morning, couldn't you, I suppose?
Definitely. I can see Carl shaking his head there as well. So thank you everyone for today. Thank you for listening as well, and anyone who's joined, and I'll pass you to Carl.
By the way, Michelle, as an anniversary present, has just given me a book from 1782.
Oh wow!
It's basically, look at that. It's the justice of the peace. It's what you could be prosecuted for. Look at that. The original. It's an original book from. Basically, we've got potpourri in here, which I know Anne's guilty of. And there's so much stuff in here. Rioting. When three persons or shall be assembled themselves together with an intent mutually to afflict one another against any who shall oppose them in the execution of some enterprise of a private nature with force or violence against the peace, or to maintain terror of the people, whether the act intended were itself lawful or unlawful, if they only meet to such a purpose or intent, although they shall after depart of their own accord without doing anything, this is an unlawful assembly. So you guys are unlawfully assembling. What a mouthful, yeah.
And we're paying for it as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's in here as well. If you actually pay to unlawfully assemble, that's definitely warranting execution by hanging. And there's also rules on turnips as well. Turnips. Here we go, turnips. If any person shall take any or maliciously pull up or destroy any turnips, potatoes, cabbages, parsnip, peas or carrots, growing or being in any garden, lands or grounds, open or confined, he shall, on conviction before one justice, and it goes on and on and on. By the looks of it, you could be put to hard labour for nicking some carrots.
Yeah, well, I expect
that's where it was, yeah.
You know, so you know, it's serious stuff. This is. So yes, I know you're really jealous. Look, you're really jealous. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. You're so jealous. And the original pages. Look at that. Amazing. I'm so sorry, Jessica. So what next week we'll be looking at Bill's love life. Right, so the next part of that will be looking at Ireland.
Oh, right.
And will have her t-shirts delivered before she changes her mind. Is anyone actually doing this thing on the 10th with Jessica? Yeah, from you guys. No?
Oh, really?
So, just
my problem is toilets.
Well, just go behind a bloody hedge. Jessica does.
No.
Oh, and by the way, this was in the news. Jessica knows about this one.
Yeah.
It's the article of how a medieval scroll girdled women's loins for labour. And they knew it girdled women's loins for labour because there was an analysis of the stains on the 3-metre parchment. Basically, there were smears of all sorts of things on it. And after a while, I stopped reading this out.
I think it's quite interesting how they saw that because there was religious imagery on there.
That's right.
That I think it was Jesus on the cross. There was a sort of rubbed away where people were actually sort of touching it and meditating in a way.
That's
sort of
right.
getting themselves through it. So
That's
it was
right.
very interesting.
That's right. And there was all sorts of yeah. We won't go into that. Oh, and Bill's been metal detected at more sites, but we won't talk about where he's been.
Oh, do you think...
I've told him about my bucket handle.
But bucket handle.
Story of my life, isn't it? It's a story of my life.
There you go. Bill, just think, the real treasure that you will get was when you buy a copy of my next book.
Well, I said I would, Carl, whenever it comes out.
Well, hang on, it's with the printers. I don't know where it bloody is, bloody
I know that, yeah.
Bill, could you bring a Geiger counter to Tom?
No. Well, there's nothing atomic near me, I don't think.
Your metal
detector. A metal detector.
Have we got geophys, Carl?
Actually, Michelle was thinking about buying some geophysical equipment. If so, we'll just get Jessica doing the geophys in all these fields, finding wonderful things.
That would be great, you know.
And as I've said before, my metal detector is available really to the group for anything specific.
Bill, on the top of the Garth Mountain, there's a firing range. I'm going to send you up there.
Find some bullet.
What's Wednesday like for you?
What, metal detecting on firing ranges at the Garth?
Wednesday, Tondi. Can nobody hear me?
Bill,
Yeah.
she wants you over at Tondi on Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, that could be possible.
We'll see what the weather's like.
Yeah.
It's snowing, we won't go.
Snowing?
Somebody said it was going to snow on Sunday.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's going to snow in Antarctica.
Wintry on Monday, isn't it? Yeah. What will be, que sera, sera.
Oh, Anne, did you get your replacement Ghosts of Glamorgan book?
Yes, I felt a bit guilty because I gave the lady my book and I'd actually read it, and there was a bit of a nail mark on the page, the front cover, you know, like a little dent. And this is so perfect, this book.
I know, Anne. Don't worry, Anne. You know the dent on the page of the book, Anne?
Yeah.
Was it related to Arthur?
Arthur?
Arthur Dent out of Hitchhiker's Guide.
Oh, no.
Sorry, I'm really sorry. Henry knew exactly what I was talking about. He really did. Oh God. Oh, by the way, none of you are in the Vale of Glamorgan, are you? Which is a bit of a shame.
No.
Oh, you are.
I am.
Yeah. Well, if you get a postal ballot, you'll see a familiar name on it, Henry.
Will I?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not sure they allow the Irish to vote in UK elections yet.
I think you're what's the word? A traitor.
What?
I'm a traitor.
You live at Penshire and you're sitting for Vale of Glamorgan.
That's because I officially live in Barry.
How?
Because I do.
Oh, you just play all the games.
He lives on the beach.
I know.
Make sure you've got a finger in every pie.
Good politician, good politician, yeah.
Never known anyone spread himself so thin.
Oh, shut up. Oh, by the way, I'm presenting a new series for David Icke Television. I'm presenting a new series for David Icke. So.
David Icke.
Oh, no, that is.
I am. If you want proof of it, if you want actual proof of my thingamajig, I will show it on screen. Hang on a minute. Hang on. Here we go. I'm going to share this on screen. Right. Nobody believes anything I do, so I'm gonna, you know, there it is. There's the letter. That's his son, Gareth Icke. And
Gareth Icke.
That's proof.
Gareth Icke, not David Icke.
No, Gareth Icke is David Icke's son, you nunk.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well. What does he do?
What the hell does the letter say, you silly woman?
How to enlarge it?
Oh, God, you know, I tell you what, right?
Gareth Icke.
Right, look, there it is. Can you read that?
No, I lost it.
Oh my God, this is going out. This is being recorded, for God's sake. Oh my God. Right, stop. Flippin' heck. Look. I'm looking forward to doing a series for his son Gareth, and I will be absolutely wonderful on it, won't I, Jessica?
You will, Carl.
I will be so amazing that Anne will be
Jealous.
jealous.
Cosmic.
Yeah. Oh God. On that note, Jessica, you're gonna have to close this now. Oh, by the way, don't forget Jessica tonight. Anne, I do believe she's gonna probably be doing orgies in Barry or something tonight, if there's anything to go from last night.
Oh.
Yeah, every second Tuesday.
Every second Tuesday, orgies. By the way, where's the nearest brothel in Wick?
Wick?
They had to close it. It was too full of sheep.
Michelle's got to be the only woman in the world that says, "Can you hold the rat?"
Ah, what's that?
It's a rat. Look at him.
Aww.
It's a little rat. Look at him.
How intelligent they are as well.
You can't make it up, can you, Bill?
What, are you going to eat it? Or what are you going to do with it? Or some ritual?
No, it's our pet rat.
I got my rat.
Look at him. Look at him.
Right.
Oh, blimey.
Jessica, I think we're mad.
I can't beat that.
Okay, I gotta. There's my witch, Michelle. Look at him.
What's his name?
Aww. Lovely. I would like
Disgusting. Oh.
you know, they're so nice when they're playing.
There's my
His
dog.
little face.
My dog. There's my dog.
Oh my God, this is going wrong.
We're not. We're not. What's the catch? Gas, come on, hold on. Hold on.
Cats.
Oh, that's lovely. He'll have a stroke.
Oh, give me a break.
There's the witch. Say hello to the witch.
Oh, thank you so much. Anyway, it's been a good.
All right. I think I better go now.
Yeah.
Bill, I think.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Jessica, can you close the meeting? Go on.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bill, Anne, Pat, Bill, Henri.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh my God, this just gets better. I tell you what, I have conversations with some people like Henry, and they say they just go home thinking he's a liar. He can't be doing all that. There's no way. It's not possible. Oh, and my column in the Barron District News. That was. Why don't you get the Barron District News, Henry? You can't even hear him now.
He's on mute.
Yeah, good.
Sorry, I'm back now. Where do you get that from?
You can get the Barron District News from Lantwick Major and Philco's.
Oh, we don't go there. We only go to Waitrose.
You see, actually, I think you can get the Barron District in Waitrose now. It's the only local newspaper.
I'll have a look out for it.
And the weirdest thing is, right? There's me writing blooming letters into the newspaper saying that we should give back the Falklands, and then on the next page you can see me talking about my new ghost book, right? On the next page you got me seriously talking about archaeology and history, and people go, "Is this really the same person?"
I think you're over publicising. Right, have a good week.
See you, darling. I'll see you on Thursday.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.
I look
Bye.
forward to what you're going to find in Ireland.
Oh, no, we're doing those big, long, massive frigging tower things, you know?
Don't do Glendalough again.
All right, I won't do Glendalough again. Have we done Glendalough? Oh, I fell for some... Oh.
Right, I'm off. Bye.
All right,
Take
cheers,
care.
darling.
Bye.
Is that the same as Loch Doon?
Yeah. It says Bill's here, but I don't think he is. He had issues halfway. Oh, Bill's gone.
Bill's got 2 years. I don't think Anne's got a clue. Michelle said to me she was doing an online auction with eBay, right? And she said, "Oh, I wasn't able to get it because eBay have stopped people bidding at the last minute, right? So I didn't expect to get this. So justice of the peace. Look at that.
That is amazing.
It is amazing because it's 1788.
Wow.
Bringing bulls and other instruments from Rome. So in other words, you can't do the old popery. Now, post office post hours duty on farming the post horse duty. No person shall be capable of exercising any employment relating to the post office or any branch thereof, or be any way concerned in receiving, forwarding or delivering of letters before he shall have taken the following oath before a justice of the peace where he resides. I I do swear that I will not wittingly, willingly, or knowingly open, detain, or delay, or cause, procure, permit, or suffer to be opened, detained, or delayed any letter or letters, packet which shall come into my hands. It just goes on.
No, it's interesting seeing things like that. I noticed when you lifted it up, I was like, oh, the binding of that's quite old.
Yeah. Well,
Immediately.
what they've done, the original binding is actually in here, but unfortunately, somebody's redone the thing on you. But I've actually got a book binding set, so I'm going to try and give that a go.
Yeah, no, that'd be quite good. Quite interesting. Gives you something to do as well, Carl.
Yeah, I haven't got anything to do, have I? I'm actually
yeah, it's not like you're busy.
No,
you're
not like busy,
Carl.
Michelle actually comes in some days and she says, "Oh, what have you got to do now?" And I just look at her and just say,
"It's the same with my house."
Please don't ask. Please don't ask. Do you know what? I got so much stuff to scan on the scanner, right? That's what I'm probably going to do after this.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Am I solo tonight, or are you joining?
There was a joke there. Our solo.
All right, okay, that's fine, Carl.
Actually, what I'll do, I'll if I tell you what, I'll put it on live just to annoy him.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'll see you then.
We'll see you then. We'll see you then. Yeah. Do you know what I might do with this ghost walkie thing? I might just do a low key one, just get out the bloody way, and then we started.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Just do some.
Start it slow and then build it up.
Do some odd ramblings.
The odd ramblings, the odd stories.
Just sort of, yeah. That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best way to start it off.
It is, and amazingly, in my Barry class, not my Barry class, the Landsworth Major class, I get loaves of what is it?
It's a fruit loaf.
Fruit loaf, yeah. Look at that.
Nice toasted with butter on.
Oh, that's what me and Michelle are gonna have now.
It's lethal though, because I'll end up, because they're not big loaves. I could eat all of in one go.
Oh no, it's got to be toasted, but it's got to eat the whole thing.
Yeah, I've got fresh hot cross buns from a bakery downstairs for me. I know. My mum came in, she's like, "I got them for you," and left them on the side, so I gotta have some of a cuppa now.
Oh yeah, I gotta have some. Michelle, we gotta have some hot cross buns. Oh no, sliced doodah at Firkins, yeah. God, nobody noticed my duck earlier on, did they? Because I think people have just got used to my madness. God, it's the only time. Do you know, I'm the only person, right, that can have a medical emergency in a doctor's surgery and leave selling 2 of my books to the doctor.
Yeah, only you, Carl. Only you.
Only me. That's it. Yeah. Oh, I've got a little fan club growing. You know, on the Monday morning, on the Monday evening at 8, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. My members, my special members. One of them, she said, I'm really thoroughly looking forward to Monday evening, right? And this Monday they get an Arthurian story from the Tales About Wales. This Tales About Wales, amazingly enough, it doesn't look. I tell you what date is this book from? Guess.
1800s.
Why'd you say that? It looks nothing like 1800. But no, it's 1837. I thought that as well because it doesn't look like an 1800s book, but it's
no.
Yeah. 1837, yeah.
Nice little collection there, Carl, of old books in the library now.
And old women like Michelle. So I'm going to do an Arthurian story on Monday.
Yeah, no, that'd be really good.
So basically, the book is based around a mother, and she reads to her son different stories. Tales About Wales. On that note, I'm off.
Auf Wiedersehen, Carl. I'll see you later.
We'll meet again.
Don't
know where. Don't know when. I will sometimes meet again. One sunny day. Right, anyway. I do music as well. Oh, you wouldn't believe it, would you? Anyway. See you at 7. Well, yeah.
See you at 7.
Yeah. See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Mad, it's me. See you guys.